She cleans floors. Takes out trash. No one ever noticed her. But when 5 enemy jets entered U.S. skies and pilots were not enough, the old janitor quietly walked past everyone, climbed into an F-22 Raptor, and spoke 4 words that stopped every radio on base. Viper 1, requesting clearance. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. It was a Thursday. March 7, 2019. 4:47 a.m. Alaska in March is not a place that forgives weakness. The darkness at that hour is not the soft darkness of a city night, where streetlights push back against the black and windows glow with the warmth of sleeping families. This darkness is absolute. It sits on the land like a weight, cold and heavy and indifferent, stretching from the frozen ground all the way up to a sky packed with stars that give light but no warmth. The temperature outside Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson had dropped to 19 degrees below zero. The wind moving across the tarmac carried ice crystals that cut exposed skin in seconds. The mountains to the north were invisible, swallowed by darkness and low cloud. The Bering Strait was out there somewhere, hundreds of miles west, a frozen channel separating Alaska from Russian territory by less distance than most people imagined. Inside Hangar 7, the lights were low. The night shift ran on minimal power. 8 F-22 Raptors sat in their positions, each one representing $150 million of American military technology. They sat silent and massive, crouching on the concrete floor like birds of prey waiting for dawn. Their surfaces absorbed the low light rather than reflecting it, the radar-absorbing coating doing its job even at rest. Ground crews had completed pre-flight checks on 2 of them already, scheduled for a 6 a.m. training sortie. Fuel tanks full. Weapons loaded. Systems checked. Ready to fly the moment a qualified pilot climbed into the seat. The hangar smelled like jet fuel, hydraulic fluid, and cleaning solution. That last smell came from the mop bucket sitting near the far wall, next to Raptor 07-4146. The woman pushing the mop was 52 years old. Maybe 5 feet 4 inches tall. Heavy set, with the kind of solid build that came from decades of physical work rather than gym sessions. Her hair was black going gray, pulled into a tight bun at the back of her head. Her face was round, weathered, the skin marked by years of sun and wind and cold. She wore navy blue janitorial coveralls with maintenance services embroidered across the back in white thread. Steel-toed boots that had seen better days. Yellow rubber cleaning gloves tucked into her belt. Her ID badge said, Rosa Martinez. Civilian contractor. Maintenance services. She had worked the night shift at Elmendorf for 3 years. Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. She mopped floors. She emptied trash cans. She cleaned bathrooms. She wiped down surfaces in offices where classified briefings happened. She pushed her bucket through ready rooms where pilots planned intercept missions. She moved through the base like a piece of furniture, present but unnoticed, part of the background in the way that all maintenance workers become invisible to the people who depend on them. Nobody knew her name. Not really. They knew she was the cleaning lady. The janitor. The woman with the mop. That was all they needed to know. She worked quietly and thoroughly. She never caused problems. She never asked questions. She showed up every shift on time and left every shift when her hours were done. The pilots walked past her without making eye contact. The officers stepped around her mop bucket without acknowledging her presence. The security personnel nodded at her ID badge without looking at her face. 3 years. Invisible. Exactly as she preferred it. At 4:47 a.m. on Thursday, March 7, 2019, Rosa Martinez was mopping the floor near Raptor 146. She had a system. She always worked near this particular aircraft when she was in Hangar 7. She knew the aircraft the way a mother knows her child. She could tell by the sound of the ground crews working on it whether something was off with the hydraulics. She could see from 20 feet away if the maintenance team had missed a step in the pre-flight sequence. She noticed things. Small things. Things that mattered. She was making a slow, careful pass along the concrete near the aircraft's left landing gear when the alarm went off. Not the fire alarm. Not the maintenance alarm. Not the test alarm that ran every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. The threat warning alarm. It was a sound that hit the body before the brain understood it. A deep, bone-shaking pulse that came from speakers mounted throughout the hangar, throughout the entire base, a sound specifically designed to pull sleeping men and women out of the deepest rest and send them moving before conscious thought had fully engaged. It was the sound of immediate danger. The sound that separated peacetime from something else entirely. In the 3 years Rosa Martinez had worked at Elmendorf, she had heard that alarm twice. Both times had been drills. She had known they were drills because everyone around her had moved with the controlled urgency of people executing a rehearsed response. Efficient but not panicked. Professional but not afraid. This was not a drill. She knew it before anyone said a word. She could hear it in the quality of the shouting that erupted from the ready room 30 seconds after the alarm. She could see it in the way the pilots ran, full sprinting, not the controlled jog of a drill scramble. She could feel it in the air itself, the way the temperature of the room seemed to change, charged with genuine urgency. The hangar doors banged open. Emergency lights snapped on, flooding the space with harsh white light that made the Raptors look even more predatory in their stillness. Ground crews came running from every direction. Pilots burst through the side door from the ready room, some still pulling on flight suits, grabbing helmets from hooks without breaking stride, heading for their assigned aircraft with the focus of people who had trained for exactly this moment and hoped it would never arrive. From somewhere in the operations center, a voice was cutting through every frequency, loud enough to hear clearly even in the hangar. 5 contacts. Bearing 270. 60 miles out and closing. No transponders. No IFF response. All fighters scramble. Maximum priority. I say again, all fighters scramble. Rosa Martinez set her mop against the wall. She did not drop it. She placed it, carefully, handle first, letting it lean at an angle that would not cause it to fall. She removed her yellow rubber cleaning gloves from her belt, folded them once, and placed them on top of the mop bucket. She straightened up and looked across the hangar with calm, clear eyes. She counted. 6 pilots heading for aircraft. 2 positions still empty. 8 F-22s. 6 pilots. She knew where the other 2 pilots were. Captain Wilson had mentioned a head cold yesterday, might be in the medical bay. Captain Rodriguez had come in late from a weekend pass, was probably still running from the far barracks, 90 seconds away minimum. 60 miles out and closing at cruise speed meant approximately 11 minutes to engagement range. Subtract scramble time, taxi time, takeoff roll, climb to intercept altitude. Every second mattered. She walked toward Raptor 146. Not running. Walking, with the steady, purposeful stride of someone who knows exactly where they are going and has no reason to hurry because hurrying would cost time rather than save it. Around her, the hangar was pure controlled chaos. Ground crews racing to pull chocks, connect starting units, run through abbreviated pre-flight checks. Pilots climbing ladders, strapping in, beginning startup sequences. Officers on radios, screens showing tracking data for the 5 inbound contacts. Master Sergeant Collins saw her first. Collins was the senior ground crew chief for Raptor 146, a steady, experienced man who had worked fighter aircraft for 15 years and knew his job the way some people know breathing. He was in the middle of pulling the last wool chock when he looked up and saw the janitor walking toward his aircraft. "Ma'am." He stepped toward her. "Ma'am, you need to clear the hangar. This is a scramble situation, all non-essential personnel." She walked past him. Kept moving toward the ladder. "Ma'am. Stop." He moved quickly, cutting in front of her. You cannot be here. This hangar is restricted during. Master Sergeant Collins. Her voice was quiet. Completely calm. Step aside. He grabbed her arm. She stopped. Looked at him. Something in her eyes made him release her arm without fully understanding why. He had spent 15 years working around combat pilots. He had been in the presence of men and women who had faced genuine danger and come through it. He knew what that looked like in a person's eyes. That particular quality of stillness, of absolute clarity, the absence of the small nervous movements that most people carried in their faces without knowing it. He was seeing it now. In the janitor. What are you? He started. I'm taking this aircraft, she said. Stand clear. Now. She put her hand on the ladder and started climbing. Collins stood frozen for exactly 2 seconds. Then his training kicked back in. He reached for his radio. Sir, I have an unauthorized civilian attempting to board Raptor 146. Let her board. The voice on the radio was Brigadier General Thomas Mitchell, commanding officer of the 3rd Wing at Elmendorf, a man who had just been handed the most confusing intelligence briefing of his career and was about to receive something even more confusing. Collins looked at his radio. Sir. I said let her board, Collins. And get me a ladder crew on 146. Now. Veronica Martinez had not sat in a cockpit in 3 years. Her hands remembered everything. The seat received her like a familiar thing, shaped for a body like hers, positioned exactly as she had always adjusted it. Her hands moved without conscious instruction, finding switches and panels and controls in the darkness by memory, by 10,000 hours of muscle training that no amount of time could fully erase. Battery switch. On. APU. Engage. The auxiliary power unit spun up with a whine that climbed in pitch until it settled into a steady, purposeful hum. Power flowed through the aircraft's systems. Displays came to life, green and amber and white, filling the cockpit with information. Left engine. Start sequence. The GE F-119 turbofan began its startup cycle, a sound she felt in her chest more than heard, a deep building roar that went from silence to idle power in under 30 seconds. She felt the aircraft wake up around her. Felt it become alive. Right engine. Start sequence. The second engine joined the first. Now the aircraft was fully awake, both power plants running, systems online, sensors active. The radar was painting the airspace ahead automatically. The aircraft's threat detection system was already pulling in data from the base's ground radar, populating her tactical display with 5 amber contacts. 60 miles west-southwest. Moving east. Fast. Su-57 Felon fighters. Russia's newest, most advanced stealth aircraft. Each one carrying a full combat load based on their flight profile. 5 of them, flying in a loose formation that suggested tactical intent rather than navigation error. This was not a lost flight. This was a probe. Maybe more. Behind her and below, the hangar had gone completely still. Every person who had not already gotten airborne had stopped what they were doing. Pilots in adjacent cockpits had paused their own startup sequences. Ground crew chiefs stood motionless. Officers with radios held them at their sides and stared up at Raptor 146's cockpit where the janitor sat with both engines running. Brigadier General Mitchell reached the aircraft at a dead run. He was a big man, 55 years old, with the kind of face that had been weathered by decades of command. He had been a fighter pilot himself, had transitioned to command roles, had spent the last 2 years running one of the most strategically critical air bases in the United States. In those 2 years, nothing had prepared him for this. He looked up at the cockpit. At the woman in navy blue janitorial coveralls sitting in his F-22 with both engines running. Martinez. His voice cut through the engine noise. What the hell do you think you're doing? Veronica's hands continued moving through the pre-taxi checklist. She did not look down at him. Taking your aircraft, sir. You are a civilian. You are a janitor. You do not have authorization to. I have 2,847 flight hours. She was checking weapons systems as she spoke, her voice coming down to him through the open cockpit, calm and conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. 612 hours in the F-22 specifically. I am current on all systems. I have flown this exact aircraft. I know its maintenance history better than anyone on this base. Because I have been maintaining it for 3 years. You have 2 pilots missing and 5 Russian fighters inbound. I am sitting in a fully mission-capable Raptor with engines running. You can spend the next 30 seconds arguing with me, or you can clear me for takeoff. Mitchell's jaw worked. His radio crackled with reports from the tower, from the operations center, from the other pilots already taxiing toward the runway. Sir. His operations officer, Major Dana Park, was at his elbow. We've confirmed the contacts. 5 Su-57s, bearing 268, now 52 miles. They'll be over Alaska proper in 9 minutes. We have 6 birds ready to roll. If we launch now, we need 8 birds. Mitchell turned back to the cockpit. Martinez. Your clearance expired when you left the Air Force. You signed papers. Yes sir, I did. She was pulling on a helmet that had been resting in the cockpit. Not her helmet. One of the spare helmets stored in the aircraft for exactly this kind of situation. It fit adequately. I signed papers saying I would not fly military aircraft. With respect, sir, you can court-martial me after I land. Right now you need a pilot in this seat more than you need me to honor my retirement agreement. Silence. 2 full seconds. Then General Mitchell grabbed the radio clip to his belt. Tower, this is Mitchell. Clear Raptor 146 for immediate departure. Authorize pilot. And somebody get me the Chief of Staff on a secure line. Now. He looked back up at the cockpit. Martinez. His voice had changed. The anger was still there, but something else had moved in alongside it. Something that might have been, in another situation, relief. Don't get my aircraft shot down. No sir, she said. I'll bring her back cleaner than I found her. She lowered the canopy. The runway at Elmendorf at 4:52 a.m. on a March morning was a strip of gray concrete barely distinguishable from the black sky above it. The runway lights lined both sides in amber, stretching away into the darkness. The temperature on the tarmac was 17 below zero. The wind was negligible. Visibility was good despite the hour. 6 F-22 Raptors were lined up in pairs at the runway threshold, engines at maximum military power, ready to roll. Raptor 146 moved out of Hangar 7 and taxied toward the line. In the cockpits of the other 6 aircraft, pilots were monitoring their displays, running through final checks, maintaining radio discipline. They were all combat trained, all experienced, ranging from Captain Hiroshi Nakamura, 29, on his first real-world scramble, to Lieutenant Colonel James Hammer Hendricks, 41, who had intercepted Russian bombers 3 times in his career. Then a voice came over the tactical frequency. Viper flight, Viper 1 is airborne +2. I'm joining your stack. Silence on the frequency. Every pilot in every aircraft heard it. Every pilot looked at their display. A new icon had appeared in the formation stack. Viper 1. Tower, said Lieutenant Colonel Hendricks, his voice careful, confirm the call sign on the additional aircraft. Viper 1, the tower confirmed. Raptor 146. Authorized by General Mitchell. Another silence. Longer this time. Viper 1, said Nakamura, unable to help himself, identify pilot. The response was immediate. Colonel Veronica Martinez. Call sign Viper. Out of retirement. The frequency was quiet for 3 full seconds. Then Hendricks's voice, Viper. The Viper. From the 2009 Bering incident. Same one, Hammer. Stop chatting. Form up. There was something extraordinary about those words, stop chatting, form up, spoken in that particular tone, the absolute authority of someone who has done this so many times that speed and silence are simply the correct choice. Every pilot on the frequency felt it. Felt the shift in the formation's character, the way the presence of that voice changed the shape of what they were flying into. They formed up. 7 F-22 Raptors climbing through 10,000 feet, heading west-southwest, afterburners cutting twin columns of blue-white fire into the Alaskan darkness. Veronica processed the tactical picture with the part of her brain that had never stopped being a fighter pilot, even during 3 years of mopped floors and empty trash cans. 5 contacts. Definite Su-57 Felon fighters, confirmed by their radar signatures. Flying in a modified wedge formation, which meant whoever was leading them was competent. They were at 32,000 feet, which was tactically interesting. High enough for speed and coverage, low enough to complicate the radar picture. Moving at approximately Mach 0.9. Not at maximum speed, which meant they were conserving fuel. This was a sustained mission, not a dash. They had come here intending to stay for a while. She worked through the geometry of the intercept, calculating ranges, closure speeds, weapons parameters. She pulled the tactical picture down to its essentials. 7 Raptors versus 5 Su-57s. Numbers favored the defense. Technology was roughly matched, the Su-57 being Russia's first serious stealth aircraft, the F-22 being the aircraft that had defined stealth air superiority for 2 decades. But tactics were not just about numbers and technology. Tactics were about decision-making. And decisions happened faster than any aircraft flew. Viper flight, Viper 1 is assuming tactical lead. Hammer, you're my 2. A beat. Then Hendrix's voice, copy that, Viper 1. Flight, acknowledge. 1 by 1, 6 voices acknowledged. Okay, she said. Here's what we're going to do. She laid it out with the precision of someone who had thought about this kind of engagement for 3 years while pushing a mop through empty hallways at midnight. Not because she had known this specific situation would happen. Because this was what her mind did. It solved problems. It found solutions. It had been doing it since before she was old enough to know what to call it. We go in 2 elements. First element is me, Hammer, and Ghost. Ghost was Captain Sarah Chen, one of the newer pilots, but quick. We take the high line, come in from the north at 36,000. We're going to look like a standard intercept force, 3 aircraft, standard formation. The Russians will see us, assess us, and decide how to respond. And the second element, asked Hendrix. For aircraft, low and spread, using terrain masking where we can get it. You're going to stay dark, no active radar, passive sensors only, until I give the word. The Russians will be watching me. They won't be watching you. What's the play when we get there? Depends on them. She paused, checking her display. These are Su-57s. Smart aircraft, smart pilots. When they see 3 Raptors coming at them, they'll run an assessment. They'll see we're outnumbered 2 to 3 in the first element. Some of them may feel good about those odds. If they decide to hold their ground and see what we do, we'll need the second element to change those odds very quickly. And if they turn back? Mission accomplished. We escort them to the boundary and come home. A pause. Then Nakamura's voice, quiet, wondering, and if they don't? Veronica's answer came without hesitation. Then I fly at them the way I flew at the Tupolevs in 2009, and we find out if Russian pilots are still as smart as they used to be. The intercept happened at 34,000 feet, approximately 60 miles west of the Alaskan coast, over water that was frozen solid for as far as any eye could see. She saw them at 40 miles. 5 amber brackets on her display, resolving into hard tracks as her radar painted them with increasing precision. They were still in their modified wedge formation, disciplined spacing, which confirmed what she already suspected. These were not new pilots. These were experienced combat aviators who had trained for this exact kind of engagement. The lead Su-57 pilot saw her element at roughly the same moment. She watched the Russian formation tighten slightly. A subtle reaction, barely measurable in the data, but she saw it. Someone in that formation was slightly nervous. Which meant someone was very good at hiding it, and the rest were either braver or less experienced. Second element, go low and spread, she said. Now. For Raptors peeled away from the tactical picture, dropping down and out, disappearing into the radar clutter of the sea ice below. The first element continued forward. 3 American fighters against 5 Russian ones. She kept the closure rate controlled. Fast enough to be aggressive. Not so fast as to seem desperate. The way you walk toward a large, uncertain dog, with confidence, without challenge. 40 miles. 35. The Russian formation held. 30 miles. She was watching the lead Su-57's flight profile with absolute attention, reading the aircraft the way she had read aircraft for 30 years. Every deviation. Every minor correction. The way a pilot's hands on the controls showed up in the plane's attitude before it showed up in its flight path. She saw the moment the Russian lead pilot made his assessment. A very small change in formation spacing. The Russian wingmen tightening up, preparing for a maneuvering engagement. The Russian flight leader slowing slightly, fractionally, the kind of speed adjustment a pilot made when he was shifting from transit mode to combat mode. They were not turning back. Second element, she said, and her voice was the same voice she used to discuss the weather, the same voice she used to ask Collins about the maintenance log on Raptor 146, the same voice she used to say goodnight when her shift ended at 7 a.m. Come up now. Full offensive. 4 F-22s came up from below the Russian formation like ghosts. 2 ahead and to the south. 2 behind and to the north. The Russian formation was no longer looking at 3 American fighters. They were boxed. 7 against 5, with 3 of the 7 already in firing positions. She watched the Russian formation with everything she had. Watched the lead aircraft with the specific attention she had developed over years of understanding how decisions looked from the outside, how a pilot's uncertainty showed up in the tiny tremors of his aircraft, how the moment a decision was made communicated itself through the machine before it communicated itself through the radio. The lead Su-57 began to climb. Not an aggressive maneuver. A withdrawal maneuver. Pulling up and away, not toward the American aircraft but away from them, the opening move of a formation that had decided the engagement math no longer worked in their favor. She was already moving. She pushed Raptor 146 into a steep climb, intercepting the lead Su-57's new flight path not with aggression but with presence, placing herself precisely where the Russian pilot would look and find an F-22 already there. Already occupying the airspace he had planned to move into. She was close enough to see the aircraft clearly now. The Su-57 was beautiful. There was no other word for it. Long and angular, with the forward-swept look canards and the twin tails and the flat, blended fuselage that made it look like something drawn by an engineer who had studied predatory birds. It was Russia's best. It deserved respect. She gave it none. She came in close enough that the Russian pilot could see her. Had to see her. Her 3-element formation surrounding his lead aircraft, the second element holding the rest of the Russian formation in a careful, deadly embrace. The Russian lead pilot keyed his radio. Not to her. She could not hear what he said. But she could watch what he did. He rolled his aircraft. Not toward her. Away from her. A slow, deliberate roll that showed his belly and then his back, the full surface of the aircraft presented to her weapons systems, and then he was pointing west, away from Alaska, away from American airspace, back toward the ocean and the invisible line that separated this side from his side. The rest of the Russian formation followed. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. They turned back. Viper flight formed up behind them, escorting them to the airspace boundary, watching them go with the careful attention of people who had learned that missions were not over until they were completely, unambiguously over. Tower, Veronica said, her voice exactly as calm as it had been at 4:47 a.m. when she placed her mop against the wall. Viper 1. 5 contacts breaking off, heading 270, returning to Russian airspace. Intercept mission complete. The tower's response took a moment. As if the young controller on the other end needed a second to process what had just happened. Viper 1, Tower. Copy that. Outstanding work. All aircraft return to base. Copy, Tower. Viper flight, form up. We're going home. The landing happened at 5:24 a.m. Still dark. Still cold. The Alaskan winter had given nothing back. 7 F-22 Raptors came down the glide path in sequence, landing lights cutting white lines through the pre-dawn darkness, each one touching down with the precise, controlled competence of highly trained pilots executing a routine they had practiced 10,000 times. Raptor 146 touched down last. Veronica brought the aircraft to taxi speed, turned off the active runway, followed the marshaller signals toward Hangar 7. Her hands moved through the post-flight checklist with the same muscle memory that had carried her through the startup sequence. Engine temperatures. System states. Fuel remaining. She noted every parameter the way she had noted them for 14 years of active flying, because the aircraft deserved that attention and the maintenance crews who would work on it next deserved accurate data. She taxied into Hangar 7 and shut down both engines. The silence was remarkable. Not actual silence, of course. The base was fully awake now, humming with activity, radios crackling, ground crews moving, officers in the operations center pulling together after-action data. But in the cockpit of Raptor 146, with the engine spooling down and the systems going quiet around her, there was a particular kind of silence. The silence after. She raised the canopy. The cold air hit her face. Sharp and clean. She climbed down the ladder from the cockpit. The hangar was full of people. Ground crews. Officers. The 6 other pilots who had landed ahead of her and walked back toward the hangar rather than going to debrief, as if they needed to see this first. Colin standing near the nose of Raptor 146 with an expression she had never seen on his face before. And Brigadier General Thomas Mitchell, standing 20 feet away with his arms crossed and his face unreadable. She walked toward him. In her janitorial coveralls. In her steel-toed boots. With her gray-streaked hair still in its tight bun. She stopped 3 feet from him and stood at attention from force of habit that had survived 3 years of retirement and evidently was not going away. "Colonel Martinez," he said. "Sir." "Hell of a morning." "Yes, sir." He uncrossed his arms. He was quiet for a moment, and in the quiet she could hear the other pilots around her, the ground crews, everyone watching this, understanding that whatever was said next would matter. "The Secretary of Defense was on the phone," Mitchell said. "So was the Chief of Staff. There are going to be conversations. Many, many conversations, about tonight. About you. About the fact that a medically retired colonel was working as my janitor for 3 years without anyone in my chain of command knowing who she was. Sir. I'm not finished." His voice was not angry. It was something more complicated than angry. "Those conversations are going to happen. There will be reviews. There will be paperwork. There may be legal questions. I want you to understand that." "Understood, sir." Additionally, he said, and something shifted in his face, a slight movement around the eyes, "The Chief of Staff asked me to convey that in light of tonight's events, and in light of your service record, which I have now been fully briefed on, your medical retirement is being reviewed for reversal. Effective pending that review, you are being reinstated to active duty at your previous rank." The hangar was completely silent. The short version, Mitchell said, is that you are unretired, Colonel. Effective immediately. And I am personally putting you back in a flight suit before 0800 hours. Veronica said nothing for a moment. She looked past Mitchell at the other pilots. At Hendricks, who had flown with her that morning, who she had never met before 45 minutes ago and who had handed over tactical command without question when she asked. At Nakamura, the young one, who had been scared and done everything right anyway. At Chen, who had held her position in the first element like she had been flying with Viper flight for years. Good pilots. All of them. Good enough to not need her. Not really. She looked at Collins. Collins, who was standing next to Raptor 146 with his hand resting on the nose gear door. Collins, who knew this aircraft the way she did, who had worked on it for years, who kept it mission-ready through Alaska winters and the grinding maintenance schedule of a heavily used fighter. She looked at the aircraft itself. Raptor 07-4146. She knew every panel. Every fastener. Every system. She had been cleaning around it for 3 years and flying it long before that. She had watched it go out on training missions and watched it come back. She had noted the times maintenance had been slightly sloppy and put in anonymous maintenance reports through the contractor system. She had been, in the way that mattered most, taking care of it. She looked back at General Mitchell. "Sir," she said, "I appreciate the offer." "That wasn't an offer, Colonel. That was an order. With respect, sir, I'm currently a civilian contractor. You can't order me." Mitchell's eyes narrowed. "Reinstatement is pending review," she continued. "Until that review is complete, I remain a civilian. And as a civilian, I am respectfully declining reassignment." The silence in the hangar had become something almost physical. "You're declining," Mitchell said. "Yes, sir. You just intercepted 5 Russian Su-57s in a janitor's uniform, and you are declining a chance to come back." "Yes, sir." "Why?" She was quiet for a moment. Thinking about how to say something that had not needed words for 3 years because she had been living it instead. "Sir," she said finally, "those are good pilots. Better than I was at their age, most of them. They don't need me flying. They need their aircraft to work. Every single time. No exceptions. No surprises." She looked at Raptor 146. "I know this aircraft. I know every aircraft in this hangar. I know which ones need a little extra attention and when. I know when a maintenance log entry looks fine on paper but something isn't quite right in practice. I know things about these jets that no one else on this base knows because I have been watching them, every night, for 3 years." She paused. "Tonight worked because these aircraft were ready. Not because of me. Because of the people who take care of them. Mechanics. Ground crews." She looked at Collins. "Crew chiefs who know their aircraft the way they know their own hands. That's why tonight worked." "And you're telling me," Mitchell said slowly, "that you would rather mop floors and watch over these aircraft than fly them." "I'm telling you, sir, that somebody needs to watch over them. And I'm already here. And I'm very good at it." She let the smallest possible smile onto her face. "Also, nobody's going to question a janitor being in the hangar at 4 in the morning. Harder to watch your aircraft if people start noticing you." Mitchell stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the other pilots. At Collins. At his operations officer. At the assembled ground crews. He shook his head very slowly. "Martinez," he said, "you are the most stubborn human being I have ever encountered in 29 years of military service." "Thank you, sir. That wasn't a compliment." "I know, sir." Another long pause. "The review will happen," he said. "And whatever they decide, it will be on record that this base would not have successfully intercepted those contacts this morning without you." "Noted, sir." He turned away. Then stopped. One question, he said, without turning back. Why this base? Why Elmendorf? You could have gone anywhere. She looked at Raptor 146 for a moment before she answered. My jets are here, she said simply. Mitchell walked away. The crowd in the hangar slowly broke up. Pilots heading to debrief. Ground crews returning to their work. Officers back to the operations center to begin the long process of documenting and reporting what had happened in the airspace west of Alaska that morning. Collins walked over to her. He stood next to her and looked at the aircraft they both knew too well. You knew it would come to something like this, he said. When you came here. You knew something like tonight would happen eventually. Hoped it wouldn't, she said. Prepared in case it did. He nodded slowly. 3 years. 3 years. A moment of quiet between two people who understood the same things about the same machine. Colonel, he started. Rosa, she said. Same as yesterday. He looked at her. Rosa. Same as yesterday, she repeated. Same as tomorrow. She walked back to the mop bucket near the wall. Picked up the handle. Put on her yellow rubber cleaning gloves. Someone had tracked an ice and slush on their boots during the scramble. The floor near the hangar entrance needed attention. She pushed the bucket toward the door. Behind her, Raptor 07-4146 sat in its position, fueled and armed and ready, its radar-absorbing surfaces drinking the hangar light. Waiting, like all good things, for the next time it would be needed. Rosa Martinez mopped the floor. Outside, over the Bering Strait, the sky was beginning to lighten. The long Alaskan night was ending. In an hour the sun would clear the mountains to the east and cast pale gold light across the tarmac and the parked aircraft and the mountains beyond, the same light that had been falling on this land for longer than any country had existed to claim it. The threat warning alarm was silent. The base was safe. And the janitor who had made it so was finishing her shift. 700 miles to the west, in a secure facility outside Vladivostok, a communications officer filed a report on the morning's intercept. The report noted standard elements, aircraft types, intercept geometry, engagement decision, withdrawal. At the bottom of the form, under Notes on Opposing Force, the senior pilot who had led the Russian formation that morning had written a single line. The translation from Russian read, Lead American aircraft, call sign Viper. We have seen this before. Do not engage.